So today I'd like to talk to you about whether a nonprofit can make money. And those air quotes are because people misinterpret the name nonprofit for meaning that a nonprofit organization can't have money at the end of the year or have a positive cash flow. And that's not true. Nonprofits, of course, need to bring in money. They can't function without that. So first I'm going to break down for you how a nonprofit is different from, say, a private corporation. And then I'm going to talk to you about what the different revenue streams or funding streams are for nonprofit organizations. There are three sectors. The first sector being public. That would be federal, state, local government. The second sector is private. Those are all the companies you know, from the mom and pop shop on the corner selling muffins to international conglomerates like Coca-Cola. And then the third sector is nonprofit. And there are laws that govern how nonprofit can bring in revenue and what that revenue can be used for. And that's one way that's different from a company. Another way a nonprofit is different is that the money that a nonprofit brings in goes to serve the organization. And the organization is responsible to the people it serves, the people who volunteer and work for it, the board of directors. Those are the stakeholders in a nonprofit organization. Whereas with a for-profit company, that company, if it's a public company, is responsible to its shareholders, its board, and its employees. Whether or not it's public or private, it's responsible to those people. That's who it's making money for. Another way a nonprofit is different is that the revenue streams are vast. They are varied. It depends on what kind of organization, how old the organization is, where the organization is situated, whether it's local or state or national. And those revenue streams are a lot more unclear and uncertain. If you're Coca-Cola, you know you're going to be selling soda and Dasani and whatever other foods and products that Coca-Cola sells. You can pretty much gauge that that's where your money's coming from. Nonprofit revenue sources can change over time. And by knowing what your likely revenue sources are for the coming years, it will help you to focus your efforts in terms of fundraising and also to not waste your time trying to focus on a revenue stream that really doesn't make sense for your organization at this time. It could change over time. Let me get into a couple of examples so you see what I mean. So two very different nonprofit organizations that make their money in very different ways make their money. One would be the Atlanta Zoo. I'm in the Atlanta area here, and the Atlanta Zoo is really great about publishing in their annual report. They have a nice pie graph. You can go online and look at it, and it shows where their revenue comes from. So I'm reading this. I don't know what year this is from, but it's recent. 39% of their revenue comes from admission, people going to the zoo, buying their tickets, and 21% comes from selling food and tchotchkes, t-shirts, little plastic animals, and event rentals. So people who may be having some kind of big event at the zoo. 18% comes from membership. These are people who buy an annual membership and they get a discount off of their soda that they buy for their kid while they're there. 12% come from donations, and those are probably individual donations. Those could be donations from other corporations. 6% from conservation and events. So those might be grants that they get for conservation efforts and education. 3% from contributed goods and services. That's probably things like gifts in kind, where someone will donate, 10,000 pounds of elephant kibble. I don't really know exactly. And 1% of other. And I can't really tell you what that is either, but it gives you a good idea of how the Atlanta Zoo drives revenue, or did that year. Another example would be a public university. State University basically draws its revenue from tuition and state taxes. So the people who live in that state and maybe the county and the city are paying taxes that help to fund that university or defray their land tax or something like that. And sale of materials, things like the bookstore, football tickets, other event tickets, things like that. So you can see that those are two very different types of nonprofits, and they rely on different types of income. The other thing that shows you is that nonprofits rely on a variety of funding streams, and there's not generally an organization that is only funded through one type of revenue. And that, again, speaks to how important it is for you to understand what type of revenue streams your organization should be focusing on. All right, so now I'm going to break down the different types of revenue streams. In the United States, I've read a few different reports to try to get a percentage, but pretty much most of the revenue for nonprofits in the United States is driven by individual giving. And some reports I read said over 70%. So individual giving is someone writing a check or putting their credit card in on your website and giving their money. That also includes things like people leaving your organization in their will, a legacy gift, people who have donor advised funds and they have that set up, say, through a community foundation, and every year your organization gets a certain percentage of the interest their funds have, or maybe it's a set amount, things like that. So there is no cap to how much you can be appreciative of people who give you money, and how much you can do for them in return. It's just one of the most important things that a nonprofit can do is to recognize individuals, is to support your volunteers, your members, your board, anybody who might want to give your organization money. Just probably one of the most important things an organization can do, besides the programs and services that you offer to the people who you're serving. The second largest form of revenue for organizations in general is fee for service. Again, that could be the tickets to get into the zoo, that kind of thing. That could be a YMCA, you pay for your kids' gymnastics classes, that kind of thing. Their preschool, if they go there, that kind of thing. After that, I don't really have percentages and who's on first, what's on second, but I'm just going to give you the rest of the ones that I've got here. So dues and memberships. Some organizations have membership structures, some don't. That's a whole other video, and there's lots of sides to be argued on that. Another one is grants. There are public grants and there are private grants. So an organization may get grants from either federal, state, or local public sources. Those might be ongoing. That might be something that the organization can count on for its lifespan or for a very long time. Or those can be sporadic. You might have to apply for grants from different levels of government every single year. And that could really make your budget vary widely. So that would be a big uncertainty for some organizations, or it could be a really nice, consistent form of revenue for others. I have worked for organizations who get a lot of grant money, and I have worked for organizations who get virtually no grant money from public sources. It really just depends. It depends on what your organization is doing and who it's serving primarily. Private grants can come in lots of different forms, and I think I'm going to do another video about that, because there's ways that you can increase the likelihood of getting private grants. And again, it's going to depend on what your organization does, who's within your in your sphere of influence, things like that. Some organizations, like I said, are going to be very dependent on grants. Some are really not. CFCs, which I'm sitting here and trying to rack my brain It is CFCs are people who work for the government, and they can assign money to be taken out pre-tax of their paycheck to go to donations to nonprofit organizations. And that money is pre-tax, so it reduces their taxable income. And it stands for, can't remember at the moment, charitable foundation contributions. It's really hard getting old. Anyway, that's something that I have worked for organizations where I had never heard of it and nobody ever gave, to organizations where it's a nice little chunk. I've not worked for an organization where it's a large percentage of revenue, and it hasn't been something that I have seen a way to maximize that. It really kind of feels like it's just a cherry on the cupcake type of thing. And it's really complicated. There are lots and lots of local cities and parts of states that people can work with their local organization, public organization, and give money to nonprofits. But if that's something that you're really interested in, I can try to get some more information, so let me know. But it's really not a big one as far as I'm concerned, in my experience. Sale of materials, that could be something big. It could be something very, very minor. It's important to know that anything sale of materials, or really any of these revenue streams, the money that you derive, the revenue that you derive, needs to be mission centric. So there's a certain percent of revenue that you can derive from things that don't help support your mission. But again, those are very regulated. So for example, if you have your organization is a shelter for battered women, you might have a thrift store that your organization owns and runs, that people come to and they buy things from your thrift store, and that money helps to support your organization. That might be regulated, and there's different laws and everything, and I'm not here to tell you what those are. But so in general, you can raise money by selling things, but there's a difference between things that are raising money to support your mission, and then there might be something that's a for-profit sort of arm that raises money of people purchasing things. That's not the same as a mission-centric sale of materials. Investments and interest. So your organization might have brokerage funds or endowment funds or bank accounts, and the money that the organization raises from interest and those investments is another form of revenue. To me, it's more of a passive type of a thing, and it's something that I think sort of gets invested back into the company. So it's not really something that I go, oh, great, we're making $6,000 on interest this year, so next year I'm going to put that into my program budget. And because the economy and things going on outside of your control are what dictate what those are going to be for the coming years, it's not something that I think you can really focus any effort on increasing, other than having the money in those accounts through those other revenue streams, or be counting on to really fund ongoing programs and services. If you have a very large endowment, that could be very different for you. Sponsorships and ad revenue, cause-related marketing, those things could be really great for an organization if you figure out how to do it and how to do it well. There's lots of conversation around whether an organization should have, say, ads on their website or have sponsors. So those are things you need to be really careful when you're thinking of developing. And I could do another video on that because I do have some experience with that. And I can give you sort of the pros and cons of sponsorships and ad revenue. Corporate philanthropy, that is when a company will give a nonprofit money. And that has been a growing form of revenue for nonprofit organizations in recent years because companies, for-profit companies, are much more cognizant of being socially responsible. And they even call it CSR, it's corporate social responsibility. And whether or not you think that's really driven by their desire to be really good citizens or whether it's in their self-interest to be socially responsible, nonprofits benefit because companies will partner or make grants or give donations. They will match their employee giving. So if one of their employees makes a donation to your organization, their company might match it, whether it's 100%. A lot of times matching does imply 100%. They will even give a nonprofit money when their employee volunteers. So an employee might track volunteer hours and then they designate what nonprofit is going to get the money they accrue through volunteerism. So those are some ways where a nonprofit organization will benefit directly from being involved with a company. It might be just totally passive. You might just get those checks in the mail from a company and you didn't even know it. But there are things that you can do to maximize those. And certainly if you're a local nonprofit, it really bears looking at what's around you and how you can partner with for-profit companies, because it's really a quid pro quo kind of thing. It's a win-win, as they say. You can be helping another nonprofit to increase their corporate social responsibility by them being able to show that they are helping you out. So there you go. There's a bunch of different revenue streams. I hope this was helpful. Please leave your comments. Let me know what you want me to talk about in upcoming videos. And if you like this video, if you like some of my others, I hope you will subscribe. And I hope everybody learned something here. And we'll see you soon.